Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Michael. You are watching IDB, and in this video, I'm comparing the iPhone 16e, the iPhone 16, and the iPhone 16 Pro. I'll be comparing every single difference between all of these iPhones, and hopefully at the end of this video, you'll be able to make a better purchasing decision for you. Let's go ahead, roll the intro, and jump right in. So I first want to start by giving a very quick overview of every device, starting with the iPhone 16. The iPhone 16 has a 6.1-inch OLED display. It has two cameras on the back, one wide and one ultra wide. Inside of the chip is the Apple A18 with a 5-core GPU. It also has the newest feature on iPhones, which is camera control. This is considered the normal iPhone in the lineup. We have the cheaper one and the more premium one. This one lives right in the middle, and this one starts at $799. Next up is the iPhone 16e. This is the newest iPhone in the lineup. So just like the iPhone 16, it has a 6.1-inch OLED display. However, when we go to the back, you can see it only has one camera, so we don't get the ultra wide that we had on the iPhone 16. Instead, we just have one single wide camera. Inside the chip is again the A18, however the GPU only has 4 cores instead of 5. In the lineup, this is, like I said, considered the entry-level iPhone, so if you just want the newest, cheapest iPhone, this is the one to go for. And the starting price of the 16e is $599. And then finally, for the iPhone 16 Pro, this device has a 6.3-inch OLED display compared to the 6.1-inch on the other devices. On the back, we have a triple camera system with a LiDAR sensor. Inside is the Apple A18 Pro with a 6-core GPU. Just like the normal iPhone 16, we also have camera control on the iPhone 16 Pro. And in the lineup, this is considered the premium iPhone, and this one starts at $999. So when we compare all of these iPhones, we have $599, $799, and $999 with a $200 price difference between all the models. Before I start showing all the differences between these iPhones, I first want to share the list of what these iPhones have in common, because the list is actually pretty long. The first one is Apple Intelligence. So every single iPhone in the lineup supports Apple Intelligence. So if that matters to you, with every single iPhone, you're going to get those writing tools, you can get the image generation tools, and also ChatGPT integration, along with some other features coming in a software update later on. We also get an action button on all of these iPhones. So here you can see on this iPhone 16, just above the volume key is an action button, and this lives on every single iPhone in the lineup. All of these iPhones also have emergency SOS via satellite. This is a really cool feature where you can always reach emergency services even if you are off the grid. I really like that Apple has included this even on the cheapest iPhone 16e. And every single iPhone in the lineup also supports Face ID. So this is really great, especially for the 16e, because the 16e is replacing the iPhone SE, which, as you remember, had Touch ID. So it's now awesome that Touch ID is completely gone across the entire iPhone lineup, and now no matter what iPhone you buy, you're going to get that really secure face unlock. Also, all of these phones are water resistant, so if you are using them in the rain or if you drop them in the pool by accident, these phones are going to be completely fine. And while there are some differences with the cameras, which we are going to touch on later, every single iPhone 16 model can take 48 megapixel photos with the ability to do a full res 2x crop. So when you're shooting in that 2x crop, it's going to be in 12 megapixels. But the great thing about all of these iPhones is that every single main camera can shoot in 48 megapixels. And also, every single iPhone in the lineup now supports USB-C. So this is notable for this phone, the 16e, because this is replacing the iPhone SE, which, as you remember, did have a Lightning port. So it's fantastic that now, no matter what iPhone you buy, you're getting a USB-C port. These phones all support wireless charging, although there are some differences with MagSafe. And for storage, they all start at 128 gigabytes. So those are all the differences between these iPhones. Now let's jump in and compare all of the differences. The first category I want to cover is the display. So starting with the iPhone 16e. The display on the iPhone 16e in terms of brightness goes up to 800 nits of brightness. When you're watching HDR content, it can peak at up to 1200 nits, but when we compare it to the other iPhones in the lineup, it does get a lot higher. So for the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 16 Pro, the brightness difference is identical. So the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro are able to get up to 1000 nits of normal brightness. When you're watching HDR content, they can get up to 1600 nits, so already brighter than the 16e. But one feature I love about these iPhones is the outdoor brightness. When the iPhone detects that you're outside in direct sunlight, these two phones can reach up to 2000 nits of brightness, which honestly is one of my favorite features on these iPhones. And no matter what the scenario is, you can always see what's on your display, and you simply won't get that with the iPhone 16e. One feature which is present on only the iPhone 16 Pro in terms of the display is the refresh rate. So the iPhone 16 Pro has a 120 Hz Pro Motion display, and when you swipe through iOS and you're seeing all the animations, it looks ultra smooth. Some people simply can't even see the difference, and some people refuse to use an iPhone that has a 60 Hz display. For me, I am one of those people where I do definitely see the difference. So every single time I'm using one of these other phones, I feel like the display is very choppy. This iPhone 16 Pro is my daily driver, so every time I switch to a different phone, I notice it right away. And because this video is being filmed at 30 frames per second, it is literally impossible to show you in this clip. So I'm going to put in a slow motion video so you can see exactly what this difference looks like. Another difference with these displays is for the lowest level of brightness. Both the iPhone 16 and the 16 Pro can go down to just 1 nit of brightness in a dark situation. So this is very useful when you're using your iPhone in bed and the room is pitch black. When I was doing my initial testing on the iPhone 16e, I was using it in bed, and it was quite annoying because it was literally blinding me. And I was missing my iPhone 16 Pro just because of how low the brightness could go. So here on the 16, if I bring the brightness all the way down, you can see you can't even really see the display. So this really is an underrated feature on these iPhones. When you're looking at the displays at nighttime, it's going to be a lot easier on your eyes. Another difference on the displays is the Face ID cutout. So on the iPhone 16e, you can see we have a pretty ugly notch, and this notch doesn't serve any purpose other than being there for the Face ID module and the front-facing camera. But when we compare that to the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 16 Pro, you can see that we have dynamic island. And all of the same sensors live in this area. I'll actually grab the iPhone 16 because it's easier to see. But you can see it makes the screen feel a lot more immersive, and the dynamic island also serves a purpose. So you can have all of your ongoing activities in the island, and you can pretty much multitask on the iPhone. And it's a feature that the iPhone 16e simply doesn't have. So for example, if I open up the clock and start a timer, when I swipe home, you can see it now lives in the island like that. So if this is an important feature for you, I'd recommend either getting the iPhone 16 or the 16 Pro, because that feature simply does not exist on the 16e. So I went ahead and changed the wallpapers on some of these phones so you can see this next difference a little bit better, but it is the bezels. For some people, this may not matter at all, but some people like a very immersive iPhone display. Obviously, on the iPhone 16e, you're going to get the thickest bezels. This uses the exact same screen as the iPhone 14, and you can see while they're not thick, they are pretty big when we compare it to the other iPhones in the lineup. So comparing the iPhone 16 to the iPhone 16e, you can see the bezels are ever so slightly thinner, and it gives you a more immersive display. When we compare that though, however, to the iPhone 16 Pro, you can see that this has the thinnest borders ever on an iPhone, and the iPhone 16 Pro looks so immersive. So even though there is a difference in the thickness of the bezel, it really doesn't matter when you're using it day to day, because like for example, if you buy the iPhone 16e, it's not like you're going to also have an iPhone 16 Pro in your other hand to compare it to. And once you get used to it in a few days, you're not even going to notice it. But just keep in mind though that you do get a more immersive display as you go up the iPhone lineup. So I now quickly want to cover the chip inside of these iPhones, even though I quickly covered it at the start of the video. But the iPhone 16e, 16, and 16 Pro all have the Apple A18 chip inside. However, as you step up the iPhone ladder, you are getting a slightly better GPU in each of the chips. So a GPU is a graphics processing unit, and on the iPhone 16e, you have a 4-core GPU. On the 16, you have a 5-core GPU, and on the iPhone 16 Pro, it is a 6-core GPU. So that simply means that graphics-intensive tasks are going to be a little bit better on these two iPhones. If you're playing really heavy games on these iPhones, it may be a bit better for you to get the Pro iPhone, but that's not saying the iPhone 16e is going to suck in terms of speed. This is still going to be a very, very fast phone, and because they all have the Apple A18 chip, I would suspect that these all get the exact same software updates either 6 or 7 years into the future. So now let's talk about all of the camera differences between these iPhones. This is probably going to be the longest section of the video because cameras is what Apple puts most of their focus to. As you step up the iPhone ladder, every camera is going to get slightly better, and also you're going to get one additional camera as you step up the iPhone ladder as well. Starting with the iPhone 16e, the iPhone 16e has a single 48 megapixel fusion camera, as Apple calls it. And because it is 48 megapixels, you can do a 2x full res crop. So here in the camera, even though you only have a single camera, you can see we still have a 2x button. And when you take photos in this mode, it will be in 12 megapixels. Essentially what it's doing is it's cropping into the middle 12 megapixels of that 48 megapixel sensor. The iPhone 16 has two cameras, so it still has a 48 megapixel main camera, but it also has a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera. Something that's important to note about the main camera on the iPhone 16 is the sensor is a lot bigger than what we have on the iPhone 16e. So you're going to notice your photos are a lot sharper, especially in low light. When we open up the camera app here to show you the experience, you can see we have 3 buttons now instead of 2. So if you click on the 2x, it's going to be identical as the iPhone 16e. It's going to be cropping into the middle 12 megapixels of that sensor. But here you can see we now have a 0.5 button and we can zoom all the way out. This, for some people, is an essential camera feature, and the iPhone 16e simply doesn't have it. Me personally, I love using the ultra-wide on my iPhone. I use it pretty much every time I'm taking photos. And then finally, on the most expensive iPhone, the 16 Pro, we have a triple camera setup. The main sensor is 48 megapixels again. However, the sensor size is even bigger than the iPhone 16. So this is the biggest sensor you can get in any iPhone. Also, the ultra-wide is now 48 megapixels as compared to the 12 megapixel ultra-wide on the 16. And we also have a third camera. This is a 5x optical zoom, which is fantastic for zooming in on stuff that's far away and also fantastic for portrait mode photos. You'll also see below the zoom lens, we have a LiDAR sensor. This is going to be a lot better for fast autofocus and also portrait mode photos at nighttime. So here's what the camera experience looks like on the iPhone 16 Pro. You can see it's pretty similar, except now we have 4 buttons. So we have our 0.5, we have our 1x, and then if we press on the 1x again, we can go to 1.2 and also 1.5. We have our 2x digital crop, which is again the middle 12 megapixels of that sensor. And then here we have the 5x optical zoom. Another small tidbit about these cameras, in particular with the iPhone 16e, is the sensor size. So like I said, even though it's a 48 megapixel sensor, it is a very small sensor. And some information has come out that in fact, Apple is using the exact same sensor on this main lens as the ultra-wide on the iPhone 16 Pro. And everyone knows that's in the tech space, the iPhone 16 Pro's ultra-wide sensor is pretty small. And Apple is now using that for the main camera on the 16e. So while your photos are not going to look bad per se, you are going to get much better sharpness and detail on the 16 and 16 Pro. So moving on from physical camera differences, I now want to talk about the actual camera experience between these phones because we actually do have some important differences. The first one is for video. So the iPhone 16 Pro and the iPhone 16 can both shoot in cinematic mode, as you can see here. So cinematic mode is going to give you a really nice blur behind your subject, and it's going to mimic a really shallow depth of field lens. The iPhone 16e, as you can see, doesn't even have that option for cinematic mode. And that's simply because the iPhone 16e only has one camera. So the 16 and 16 Pro use their 2 cameras to get depth information. And because the iPhone 16e physically lacks a second camera, you're not able to get that cinematic mode video. If that matters to you, maybe go for the 16 or 16 Pro, but I really don't think that many people use this feature. Another difference between these camera experiences is macro photography. You can see here on the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, it is showing a macro icon. That's because it's able to detect when you're close to a subject and your iPhone can go into macro mode. This macro mode is enabled by the ultra-wide camera, and again, here you're limited on the iPhone 16e because of physical differences. It simply doesn't have an ultra-wide camera, so you don't get that macro mode on the cheapest iPhone. These iPhones also all have photographic styles, but again, the iPhone 16e is going to be limited. So to get to your photographic styles on the 16e, you have to press on this up arrow and then press on the photographic styles icon right here. And this is how you change your style on the 16e. It's pretty basic and it doesn't really change the style of your photo that much. When comparing that to the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, you get so many more options in terms of photographic styles. So simply press this icon on the top right, First of all, it's a lot easier to get to compared to the iPhone 16e. But you can see you can really change the style of your photo. So here on the 16 Pro, I have gold, we have vibrant, natural, luminous, dramatic, quiet, cozy, ethereal, and a few different black and white options. On the iPhone 16e, it's pretty much going to be the exact same photo, just with a few differences to the color. But on the 16 and 16 Pro, you can dramatically change the style of your photo, and a lot of people love these features on the newest iPhones. Another feature I want to talk about is action mode. So on the iPhone 16e, when you're in video mode, there is no option to have an ultra stable video. When we compare that to the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 16 Pro, you can see here when I switch into video, there's an icon on the top left that looks like a person running. And if you click on this, it's going to turn on action mode. And this is going to make your video a lot smoother, and it's going to pretty much replicate the look of a gimbal connected to your iPhone. And as I mentioned earlier, the iPhone 16 Pro has a LiDAR sensor, so this is going to make focusing a lot faster. So for example, if you're out at night and it's really dark, when you're using tap to focus, it's going to work a lot better, I find, on the iPhone 16 Pro, because this LiDAR sensor is shooting out tiny lasers, and it's able to get an exact measurement of how far away your subject is from the lens. Another difference between these iPhones is camera control. So when we look at the iPhone 16e, you can see we simply do not have camera control. It is just the normal aluminum frame. But when we look at the 16 and 16 Pro, both of these iPhones have an all-new button, and this is called camera control. It is set up by default for a one-click. Quick launch is going to open the camera, but it can do a lot more. So here, when you're holding the iPhone like this, if you double half press on the button, you can see you can change what your camera control is doing. So I can go from zoom, whatever camera I'm using, photographic styles, tone, and a lot more. And whenever you are in these, you can do a swipe to change your camera function. This is really, really cool, and I really like this feature. Even though it's a little bit finicky, it takes a little while to get used to. Once you start using it, it does make taking photos a lot faster on your iPhone. And probably the feature I like changing the most is this one, photographic styles. Because the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro get the next-gen photographic styles, it can drastically change the look of your photos. So I constantly find myself swiping between different photographic styles with the camera control, as it can really make my photos look really neat. So there are a couple other differences that I should mention, even though a lot of you won't really notice these differences. With the iPhone 16 Pro, you can record higher frame rate 4K video. So here, if I go into video, you can see I'm on 4K, but I can tap where it says 60 FPS, and I can go all the way up to 4K 120. You can only do 4K 60 on the iPhone 16e and the iPhone 16. And one more camera feature in terms of the iPhone 16 Pro, this one really makes it deserving of the Pro moniker, is the ability to record ProRes video. So inside of settings, if you click on camera, then formats, if you scroll down, you can turn on video capture with Apple ProRes. This is going to make your video quality a lot better, even though it's going to take up a lot more storage on your iPhone. That's what the iPhone Pros are for. So if you get like a 1 terabyte iPhone 16 Pro, this can be your dedicated video camera for professional use. And the final camera difference I want to mention is slow motion video. So the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 16e can both record slow motion at 1080p, 240 frames per second. You can bring that down to 120 if you want to, but the max frame rate is 1080p, 240 frames per second. While you can do the exact same on the iPhone 16 Pro, you do get a few more resolution options. So here, if I switch over to slow-mo on the 16 Pro, you can see I now have the option for 4K 120. So even though 120 is not as slow as 240, I prefer 4K because it looks a lot sharper, especially when you're recording slow motion. So just keep that in mind. Your slow motion options are going to be a little bit more on the iPhone 16 Pro. All right, moving on from the cameras, finally, the next section I want to cover is connectivity. The iPhone 16e and the iPhone 16 both have USB-C, obviously. However, the protocol inside of these ports is USB 2.0, which is going to give you pretty slow transfer speeds if you're trying to get stuff off or onto these iPhones. When we compare that to the iPhone 16 Pro, again, it is still USB-C, but the transfer speeds are going to be using the protocol of USB 3, which is going to give you 20 times faster transfers when compared to the other iPhones. This does fit with the Pro iPhone name, as if you're using this as your main professional camera, you are going to want to transfer stuff to a computer or an SSD a lot faster. Could Apple have put that USB 3 speed on the 16E and the 16? Yes, they could have, and it wouldn't have been that much more expensive, but I think they're leaving it on the 16 Pro as a selling point. One more thing for connectivity is Wi-Fi. So the iPhone 16e only supports Wi-Fi 6, whereas the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro support Wi-Fi 7. I was a little bit surprised to hear this. I thought the iPhone 16e would have at least got Wi-Fi 6E, but Wi-Fi 6 is a pretty old protocol. It won't really matter unless your router is that new, but just keep that in mind that your Wi-Fi speeds and connection may be a little bit better on the 16 and 16 Pro. Next up, in terms of physical connectivity, is MagSafe. This is probably one of the biggest downsides of the iPhone 16e, and that is it does not support MagSafe. So here is a MagSafe mount I have, and no matter how hard I try, it is not going to stick. I do find that there are actually magnets in the back of the iPhone 16e, like I can feel the resistance, but Apple didn't build that MagSafe ring onto the back of the iPhone, so you're not going to be able to mount it on anything. You can see here if I grab another iPhone, it sticks really easily like that and it holds. We simply don't have that on the iPhone 16e, and that is a huge missing feature for a lot of people. Of course, they all do support wireless charging, but because you have MagSafe on the 16 and 16 Pro, you are able to charge wirelessly via MagSafe up to 25 watts on these two phones, but on the iPhone 16e, you can only get up to 7.5 watts of wireless charging. Another difference in terms of what's inside these iPhones is the iPhone 16e lacks an ultra-wideband chip, which is used for stuff like precision finding. So if you're using the Find My application to try to locate your AirPods, for example, it's not going to work as well on the iPhone 16e. On the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, you're able to use that ultra-wideband chip and track stuff to literally inches away. And one more thing I should mention with these iPhones is Thread networking. This really isn't that big of a feature, but I should still mention it. So Thread is a standard used in smart home technology. And when you have devices that use Thread, it just makes using your smart home so much better and faster. The iPhone 16 and 16 Pro do support Thread, but the iPhone 16e unfortunately does not have support for it. Okay, the next section is going to be physical differences between these iPhones. The first one is the back of the iPhones. So they all have a matte textured back, and they all feel absolutely fantastic. So I love that Apple replaced the iPhone 16e with the iPhone SE and brought a matte textured back onto this iPhone. The iPhone SE felt so cheap with its glossy glass back, and now even the cheapest iPhone has a premium feel. I do find that the iPhone 16 Pro has a slightly softer feeling back. That could just be because this is my daily phone. I've been using it for months, whereas these two phones are pretty new. But when you're using all of these phones without a case, the matte textured back is going to feel fantastic in your hands. Another thing for the physical build is the iPhone 16 Pro is made out of titanium. You can't really see it because it is the exact same texture as the aluminum. Titanium is known to be a little bit stronger than aluminum, so just keep that in mind if you are using the Pro and you drop it. It may be a little bit more durable than the aluminum on these two phones. However, when you look at the aluminum rails, these phones still look absolutely gorgeous. And to be honest with you, because of the colors available on the iPhone 16, I actually like the way this looks compared to the titanium on the Pro. And there is one more thing I should mention in terms of the physical build on these iPhones, and that is the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro have the new modern rounded iPhone design, whereas the iPhone 16e actually has a different design way back like the iPhone 14 did. So here, if I get it really close to the camera, it may be hard to see on video, but you can see that the edges on the iPhone 16 are a little bit softer. When you see the iPhone 16e, you can see the edges look really sharp. It doesn't really come through that well on video, but when you're holding these iPhones in your hand, you can feel it. The iPhone 16 feels way softer when I do this little motion with my fingers. On the 16e, it feels very sharp and it really digs into your hand. So there's no doubt that the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro are definitely going to be a lot more comfortable in your hand if you're using it without a case. Next up is colors. I mentioned this a few seconds ago about the iPhone 16, but I want to quickly cover what colors these iPhones come in. So the iPhone 16e is available in black and white. That's pretty much it. The iPhone SE was available in product red, but Apple has completely gotten rid of that. I have no idea why. I loved the way red iPhones looked, but we have really boring black and white for the 16e. For the iPhone 16, this is where it gets really fun. This ultramarine is hands down my favorite color ever on an iPhone. That's why I got this color. It's also available in teal, pink, and black and white. So you get really saturated colors if you pick one of the colorful options for the iPhone 16. And yeah, this color looks fantastic. And I think if you're looking for a really nice, vibrant iPhone, this ultramarine is the best looking iPhone I've ever seen. And then for the iPhone 16 Pro, it's honestly getting boring and outdated at this point, even in terms of the physical design. Like when you compare the cameras, you can tell that the iPhone 16 is the new iPhone, but the iPhone 16 Pro has the exact same camera design as the iPhone 12, so you can't even tell that you have the new one. And even the colors, Apple has this desert titanium, which pretty much looks identical to the gold that we've had in the past. It also comes in natural titanium, which is the same as the 15 Pro, and then we have black titanium and white titanium. I would love to see Apple experiment with some more saturation on the Pro iPhones, because even though this is the better iPhone and it does more, I've actually been tempted to use the base model iPhone 16 just because of how fresh and clean it looks. All right, the final topic I want to cover is battery life, and this is where it gets pretty darn interesting. So Apple measures their battery life in terms of video playback hours. So they download a video and store it locally on the iPhone so it's not streamed, and they play it in an endless loop until the iPhone dies. And the results are pretty darn interesting, I'll tell you that. So the iPhone 16 got 22 hours of video playback in Apple's test, which is pretty good battery life on its own. But when we compare that to the iPhone 16e, this got 4 hours more than the iPhone 16 at 26 hours. And then obviously the most expensive iPhone did outperform them all at 27 hours. But when you compare the iPhone 16e at $599 to the iPhone 16 Pro at $1,000, the fact that the battery life is only separated by 1 hour really says a lot. And if you simply want the best battery life ever on an iPhone, I would say that these two are close enough where it's almost a toss-up, and you are getting fantastic battery on the 16e. Now, of course, there also are other iPhones available in the lineup, like the iPhone 16 Plus and the iPhone 16 Pro Max, but I just wanted to compare the normal sizes of these iPhones, not the bigger ones. So if you do get those bigger iPhones, you are going to get better battery life, but Apple did say that this is the best battery life a 6.1-inch iPhone has ever had, and honestly, that is very, very impressive. So if you don't really care about any of the other features that the iPhone 16 has and the iPhone 16 Pro is too expensive for you, honestly, just go for the iPhone 16e because you are going to get so much better battery life on this phone compared to the 16. Okay, so with all that said and all of our comparisons done, which iPhone should you get? Honestly, worth and value are completely subjective, but I'll try to do my best to break down each iPhone for you. For the iPhone 16e, I would say get this iPhone if you're the type of person who has a pretty old iPhone and you simply want to walk into a store and get the cheapest, newest iPhone available. It's going to have fantastic battery life. You're going to get a pretty good iPhone experience. The camera is going to be decent, and you're going to get probably 6 or 7 years of software support. I'd recommend getting the iPhone 16 if you want literally 99% of the Pro experience at a phone that costs $200 less. As you saw throughout the entire video, when I showed all the differences, you probably noticed that all the differences were simply between the iPhone 16e and these two phones combined. There really wasn't that much separating the 16 Pro from the 16, apart from a few camera features. So honestly, this phone is going to be an amazing phone for so many people. And like I said, it's going to give you an experience so similar to the Pro iPhone at a much cheaper price. And then finally, I'd recommend getting the iPhone 16 Pro if you are simply a person who needs to have the latest and greatest iPhone. Honestly, that's me. I always buy the newest iPhone just because I like having it. But if you want the newest technology, the best, fastest iPhone, go for the iPhone 16 Pro. If somebody put all of these iPhones on a table in front of me and said, considering the price of each iPhone, pick the best one, I would say it's going to be the iPhone 16. You get a really nice modern looking design with fantastic colors. You get a really good camera system. And like I said, you get 99% of the experience that you get on the iPhone 16 Pro for a much better price. So I think the iPhone 16 is going to be the best iPhone for most people. So that has been my comparison between the iPhone 16e, the 16, and the 16 Pro. If you guys found this video informative, helpful, or if you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave them down below. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and make sure to subscribe for more content in the future. My name is Michael with IDB, and I'll see you in the next video.